So this tutorial is going to cover the Alice's Favorite table topper that looks like this, and it's by Peachtree Patterns, but I got mine from the Quilted Cow. I didn't order a kit on this one. I'm using my own fabric, and I used 3 fat quarters. So I used a darker one for my main print. That's going to be the center here, and then I used a lighter fabric, and I cut larger squares, and I cut the smaller squares. And with the larger squares, you're just bisecting it, which also means just to cut in half once. So you create like 2 triangles out of 1 piece. All right, and with the smaller ones, you have smaller in the dark print and smaller in the light print. You bisect it one way from diagonal to diagonal, and then I just turned my board, and then I took it and cut it the opposite way. So I got 4 triangles out of each piece. So I've got my lighter ones there that I cut. These were my smaller squares that I cut into 4 pieces for each one. My darker ones that are the same size, and then I have my bigger ones, and I still have to cut my bigger pieces in half. And then I'll have all my pieces and we'll be ready to sew. Alright, so instead of using the red to cut out these corner pieces, I decided to use another fat square and cut those. So that's going to be those. But now what I'm doing is I'm making these blocks. So you take one of your light and you lay it like that, and then you have a dark, and a dark above it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this to this one, and then I'm going to open it up and sew this to this one, and then I'll sew the top to the top row. I think, but when you're doing this, you want to leave probably around 1/4 inch hanging off. Is just like if you're doing making your binding and attaching your strips, so that way when you open it up, it'll all line up. And I think it's 1/4 inch seam allowance there. So now I have these 2 attached. This one goes here, so I'm just going to fold that over and line everything up so where it should be, maybe a little bit. And then I'm going to sew 1/4 inch there and open it up, and then I'll attach that top one. So I guess I didn't quite show this. I left a little, about 1/4 inch, or maybe it's just a little under. I could have left a little bit more on either side. See, it's a little bit overhang on that side. And when I open it up there we have that. There we have that row, and I can just trim off the dog ear or just leave it because I'm going to attach that to the top there. And I can trim up down there as well. I'm going to press it. So I'm laying the top one, and I'll just turn it over so you can kind of see how you kind of want to, that slid under a little bit. You want a little bit of both. Try to make it even of that top triangle overlapping or hanging off the edge there before you sew it on. So try to make it even on both sides. Then sew it on the front with 1/4 inch seam allowance and open it up and press. Alright, so now that that's done, I've got my main piece here. I've got my middle triangle and the tip is pointed up, and now I've taken my lighter, these were cut from the larger rectangles with my light fabric, and I'm going to put one on either side, and I'm just going to attach one at a time to either side here, and then it'll be on to attaching these, and I'll be making 4 of these blocks, and then each block will get attached to the main print square. Alright, so there it is, and I've got these dog ears up here, and I'm just going to go ahead and trim those up. So you're going to be making 2 of these blocks, and then you'll be making 2 of, I'm going to attach these squares, and then you'll be making 2 of those blocks, and then those will be the 4 sides that you're going to use to attach. So 2 of these blocks, and then we're going to make 2 of the other blocks where I attach those on, which I'm going to do right now. So here's the finished side. It'll probably be like, it can be the bottom, it can be the top, it can be the sides if that's what you're doing. But I'll make 1 more of these, and then I'll make 2 more with these ones not attached, and then I'll put everything together. Alright, so I'm working on my second block now, which I'll do also for my third and my fourth, so I just thought I'd repeat this process. I've laid out the middle of the block here, and I'm going to move the top one to the side and this one to the side, and I'm going to connect these two. So I'm just going to overlap them, and I'm just going to make sure that, you know, at least around 1/4 inch, if you can get close to 1/4 inch, is overlapping here on the end, and also, you can't see it because it's, whoops, but it's over. But if I flip it over, you'll see that it's overlapping on the other side too. And you want that overlap so that way when you, after you sew it and you fold it over and iron it back, everything lines up pretty well. And here's what it looks like when I'm done. It's got some dog ears, and you can trim it if you'd like to. You don't have to. I do my trimming, so I'll just cut that one off. And I think I'm going to wait on this one until I sew this piece on. So now I'm going to take this other red piece, I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to make sure that there's a little bit, see it better, a little bit of overlap here and a little bit of overlap down here as well. It's hanging a little bit over. So about, again, 1/4 inch as best as you can for the overlap hanging off here and the overlap you see underneath of the lighter fabric. I'm going to sew them together. All right, and this is what I have right here. And again, you don't have to, but I just like to come up and trim my dog ears off. And now, since I've attached the bottom one, I'm gonna trim off my bottom dog ears too. Whoops, got on there. Okay. All right, so far so good. And now the last thing to do is to attach this top piece here. And when you flip it over and down, you're going to get some, I don't know if you can see it very well, some overlap here on both ends from that top triangle, but I'm going to sew it from the front and just try to make sure that the overlap is about even. So now I'm going to sew that together. All right, so there's my block, and now I'm just going to come in, trim that dog ear up and that dog ear up. All right, and now I'm going to attach, I'm going to make the full block for my second one. I'm going to turn that upside down. And I'm going to take my larger ones, and I just lay them like this, and like that. And then I'll sew one at a time, so I'll just start with this one. So I'll flip it over. This one doesn't overlap as much, but I get it to overlap on both ends just a little bit. So now I'm going to sew that down with 1/4 inch. Alright, so there's what it looks like, and I'm not going to trim this bottom one off yet because I have this. I'll trim it after I attach this one. But I am going to come over and trim that dog ear off, just like that. Okay, so now it's time to attach this one. So I just flip it over, make sure there's a little bit, there's going to be a little bit more overlap on this side, and just try to even it out on the top and the bottom here and here, and then go ahead and sew that together. Alright, so for my other two blocks, this is where I would stop, but since I'm doing the other long block, now I'm going to attach my corner pieces here. So it goes like that, and it goes like that. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to stitch those on, and then I'll have to trim these up because they ended up being a little bit bigger. But since this is straight here, I just, when I flip it over, I just make sure this side and this side are aligned, and I'll trim up from the bottom when I'm done. Alright, and then to trim mine here, I'm using on my ruler, I have a 45-degree line, so I am just lining the point up with the point there, and the rest of the line with the seam there. And then I'm just going to trim up there. Alright, and so that aligns that, and then I'm going to bring this over and attach this to this side and just align it and then sew down. All right, here is my second one complete, and now I've just got to make two without these ends on there, and then I can start attaching everything. All right, now that I'm done with all my blocks, I'm just gonna follow the pattern on how to attach this. So here's my center block, and I'm gonna go ahead and attach the bottom. So it'll look like that. I'll line it up, and then I'll put right sides to right sides, and then I'll stitch it. And then I'll stitch the top on, and then I'll do the sides, which are my longer pieces. Alright, so I've attached my first long side to my piece, and at each end there is a little overhang on the triangles there, which is okay. So now I'm going to stitch that to the side. So this is the top, this is the bottom, and this is my first side, then I'll attach the other side. Alright, so here it all is finished once I've attached the sides. I'm really happy with how these aligns on each side, and this was, I think, the most I kept on my point, and this one here. This one I lost a little bit of my point, and this one I lost a little bit of my point. But you know what?